Hey, what's up? It's Jim, and today I'm going to talk about Transformers Rise of the Beasts. The Transformers live action movies are not something I'm too fond of at all. They're pretty bad, usually. And even if I know people are revisiting the other films, and you can take clips out of any one of them and make it look cool, but the sheer dredge of Michael Bay Transformers is so hard to get to at their 3-hour lengths of him whizzing his camera around and me not caring about the main character that much with Transformers storylines I never got into, and it felt very interminable to get through. It was always like to sift through some of those was so difficult. Even if I see a clip, I'm always like, yeah, but like the time you got that clip, I was so desensitized to everything because it was just like, what the fuck am I watching? But the recent Transformers films have been better. Maybe because the directors actually like the franchise and weren't just like assigned it, or actually watched the cartoon as kids or played with Transformers. But I think what Stephen Cable Jr. does here is actually make probably one of the more solid of the main Transformers films. I guess Bumblebee sort of a spin-off. Probably maybe one of my favorite Transformers movies I've seen that's not Bumblebee or the animated movie, because he seems to have a basic idea of what you need from an actual Transformers movie or a Transformers story, and I really like that about this. I grew up watching Transformers. I don't remember it as well as I used to, but I remember watching the movie and watching the sequel cartoon into the 90s even. I was still into like the continuity, and I feel like these other live action movies have sort of like killed all that because I hated them so much. But this, I think, has a couple things. One, when they transform and all this stuff's going on, they don't have so many moving parts that I'm like, what even is that monstrosity? In this, they like feel like actual Transformers. Like it feels like a designed cartoon character, not all this like Bayhem nonsense. And I really like that actually about this design. Travis Knight's last one, Bumblebee, where it felt very condensed, like sort of like actually made sense. It felt like toyetic, which I think Transformers always has, and as well as like it has leads that I actually want to follow and am interested in their story. And since Transformer movies are always more human than Transformer for some reason, but I think that is kind of the key to these, because as much as I care about Josh Duhamel, Tyrese, and Shia LaBeouf, it really makes a difference when I actually give a shit about the people who I'm indirectly, I guess, having to spend most of my Transformers movie with. So this takes place in Brooklyn in 1994. There's a lot of 90s hip-hop, which I like, and most of it is from 94, except for, Hypnotize, which was 97. Even with it getting released early on mixtapes, we're still talking 96 or 2 years off, and one character sings Waterfalls, which is clearly from 1995. But other than that, they do Hypnotize a couple times. But other than those things, it's very authentic. You could have had some Snoop Dogg, you could have had, anyway, I'm just saying, a good amount of Biggie though. That's, it's Brooklyn, it's 94, I get it. But you have these two characters, one played by Anthony Ramos. His brother's very sick and they can't afford for him to get medical treatment. He is trying to find a job. He just left the army, I believe. He ends up getting mixed up into the Transformers because he's there to steal a car to make money to support his family, and that car ends up being Mirage, the Transformer, and brings him along on this adventure, as well as Dominic Fishback, who works at a museum and kind of figures out this thing where their Unicron could never attack Earth because he never had this key or something, and she ends up getting part of the key when they go on an adventure with her, Anthony Ramos, Optimus Prime, Mirage, Bumblebee, RC, and all sorts of Transformers as they go and try to stop Unicron from eating Earth. Unicron, I think Peter Dinklage kind of ends up playing this guy Scourge, who works for Unicron but is not Unicron. Unicron is voiced by Coleman Domingo. I think the Unicron thing is a major waste of opportunity. I do not understand, like, Orson Welles was originally and famously Unicron. Like, why didn't you get another director? Like, I think the voice cast is far more diverse than it usually is, so like Spike Lee could have done it. Like another director I think would have been more fun than just like Coleman Domingo. I have nothing against you, but I don't know, it's sort of weird. And they don't do enough with Unicron, to be honest. They have this other character, Scourge, voiced by Peter Dinklage, who does a good job. He's an alright villain. I just like the interactions people have more with Unicron, which you don't seem to do as much in this, which is kind of disappointing. I'm also like, I get that Unicron, he was in Transformers movies, a big deal. I was excited for that, and it just didn't seem like he used the character very well. Also, the voice cast is interesting because I get, like, I'm all for diversity and bringing that on the screen and stuff, but when it's just like voices to robots, I think you sort of lose that. As well as, like, when you look this up, I knew that, but watching the movie, you wouldn't know that. So I don't know if it, like, really works for the whole idea of diversity, because it's like, if you don't know, I mean, it's cool these people are getting money and stuff, but it just doesn't work as well to me. And then there's one part where the character of Kulbak, who's voiced by Cristo Fernandez, who most people know as Donnie Rejos from Ted Lasso, transforms, and Anthony Ramos is like, oh, you see, because he has, like, an accent where you can tell he speaks Spanish, basically. And Anthony Ramos was like, oh, you can speak Spanish. He's like, no, I can't speak Spanish. I'm just like a fucking robot who transforms into cars. What the fuck? I just have this weird voice. And then Anthony Ramos looked disappointed, but I was also like, yeah, why did you put that in here? It made the whole thing, like, because I was wondering, like, I don't know if this, like, really does the diversity thing. I know there are people who really care about Transformers, and maybe for them it does. But I think for everyone else, they probably didn't notice. But, like, that was a scene where I was like, why did you have this guy voice this guy and then have this exchange? It was like, no, I don't speak Spanish. I'm a fucking robot who transforms into cars. Why would I do that? Okay, guys, I think this misses the whole diversity thing here, but I don't know. It was cool seeing Michaela J. Rodriguez. She's, I think, the first trans performer to be a Transformer. That's cool. Peter Cullen is always great. Ron Perlman. Pete Davidson is a Transformer, is Mirage, and is in a lot of this, probably more than you realize. I don't know why every franchise this summer with cars, Pete Davidson has to show up in. Noted car person. He's in a lot of it. He kind of gets annoying, and I wish they just gotten, like, a character actor and not Pete Davidson. And I actually don't mind Pete Davidson doing Michelle Yeoh and Liza Koshy as RC. And everybody, I think, generally does a good job, and it was nice seeing the Transformers actually look like the Transformers of old. That was kind of neat. And I think Anthony Ramos shows real star potential in this, as well as Dominique Fishback as well. And they were better to follow. Like, I really kind of cared more about their struggle, like trying to find jobs, trying to fit into the world, trying to get anywhere. And they're the ones helping the Transformers. And I thought that was, like, more relatable to me than, like, Marky Mark. They do make a Marky... Someone on, I think it was Major Mekazawa, made a joke about Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch on a community post I made, and they do make a Marky Mark and the Funky Bunch joke in this movie, which maybe is disrespectful to the previous person who was in this franchise. This is, by the way, if you're wondering, a sequel sort of to Bumblebee, which they referenced the events of Bumblebee earlier, but also a prequel, even though wouldn't they remember the Unicron stuff in the Shia LaBeouf ones? I'm a little lost on that. I think the thing with Transformers movies is I should have been more pre-sold, and I should like more of these as someone who grew up liking Transformers, and I don't like a lot of them. And some of them I'm like, oh, this was funny, haha. Optimus Prime helped with the Underground Railroad, and, like, that's not a joke, by the way. In this, I, like, actually do follow the story, and if my kids were into Transformers after we watched Bumblebee and, like, Transformers the movie, this would probably be up there. Don't want to put it with those two. I don't think it's maybe that good, but I think it is pretty decent. Stephen Cable Jr., I noticed I was probably too hard on my Creed 2 review. I rewatched Creed 2 recently, and I ended up liking it a lot more, and there's certain moments that really rang out to me. And I think Stephen Cable Jr. is an interesting director because he is very much a studio director. He's very good at working within the frameworks of the blockbuster he's making, but he's really good at it. Like, there's a certain sense of like you need to care about these characters, and he's good at making you care about those characters, but also delivering the movie the studio wants. It always feels like he's very good at that, and I think there's more going on with him in terms of these things, but he seems to really understand the genre of the franchise that he's in very well, because it felt like with Creed 2 he makes a fairly solid Rocky sequel. In this, he understands Transformers, makes a solid Transformer film, but it feels like he's, like, mandated by the studio, because why have Unicron in this at all? I don't know if they'll keep making Transformers films. This is the 7th one, and it doesn't really do enough with the Beast Wars stuff. The plot does feel like a MacGuffin to a MacGuffin to a MacGuffin kind of thing, so they can then have a big battle. It doesn't. I wish, like the older Transformers mysteries, it's like, oh, this happened, pretty huge thing, and then that caused this, and so forth. this does feel like just basic mechanics of these end of the world type of things. They do sort of reference Independence Day at one point towards the end, which they don't really do anything with. I think there's a lot of sort of opportunity in this, and I almost want to see a director with a little more panache. I think maybe that's why people are so into bringing up Michael Bay, because this is not like the big auteur is going to do a crazy statement. This is the guy who's going to deliver you a solid blockbuster. I think there's always been a thing in art is like you're either like this auteur genius who influences so many people, or you're a fine craftsman who really knows how to make a chair really well. And I feel like Stephen Cable Jr. can do that. He excellently makes these blockbusters, but it is far less showy and sexy to be like, hey, I can decently do a big studio blockbuster. It just doesn't, although I do feel like, you look at people who direct Marvel movies, it doesn't always work out that way. It feels like this is the kind of guy who would excel in the current Hollywood we're in, where they definitely just want you to attach yourself into the genre rules of a franchise or what the studio is expecting, and that's sort of what he delivers. I did like some of the fight scenes because I could see what was going on and could tell what was going on. I think that is like a major plus, and this really did feel like someone who watched Transformers. The Beast Wars stuff or the Maximals or whatever, they were fine. I kind of wish we were always hinting at like, oh, we're gonna do Beast Wars, we're gonna do Dinobots, stuff like that. And I wish they'd like have a little more fun with it. And this, like, I like the character Optimus Primal, voiced by Ron Perlman. But I kind of wish they'd done more with it. It's like, why is it called Rise of the Beast? This movie is really called like Enter the Unicron or something like that. So just, I don't know. I enjoyed this one. I think it was good. But I do think it's like, why have Unicron exactly? Why have this certain thing? What are you doing here? And it just doesn't feel like they have a reason. Maybe it's studio meddling, which I sort of think it is. But I kind of wish they just like let this Transformers movie just sort of be, because I think when it's working, it works very well. Actually, it's one of the better kind of Transformers films right now. It seems like there's real love for what that franchise and like what those movies are. But I don't get that from Michael Bay previously. But I think that also might have been because he didn't love the franchise. I get a love for the franchise and a love for like the family watch. Like there are families who go to Marvel movies and Transformers movies, and there were ones who watch them like, oh, I had a good time. It'll lose to something else later. I saw the iconography. I remember Bumblebee, and this like fully succeeds in that to a decent level. It is not going to blow your mind at all, and I don't think Stephen Cable Jr. at this point is not a director who's going to do that, but he's a director who's really good at just delivering a finely made kind of blockbuster. And he was good at making a finely made Transformers film in a way that you can tell there's love there to make it sing the way it does. I hope there's more from him, and I hope the franchise continues in this way now that Michael Bay's gone. It's interesting how much more this is getting back to sort of the source material, or for me, it is, rather than when Michael Bay was in charge and it was, going off of his insane vision of the Transformers. I don't know if I really needed that, other than I guess originally got it made and ended up people liking it. But I think this is a better place for the franchise to go, is resembling the cartoon, resembling those character designs, and remembering like sort of what worked about them in the first place. This reminded me of the characters, and the nostalgia of the soundtrack was great and stuff. It might have appealed maybe too much for me. I think that sort of worked for it. This was not embarrassed. This is the Transformers movie that's least embarrassed to be a Transformers movie. And I think that's something I really liked about it, but I wish they'd work more on the plot. I wish if you're going to use Unicron to do more with it. I think there's a lot of things they could have done to make this more interesting and weirder and so forth, but instead it's like straight down the middle. It's very good at it. I think when you see straight down the middle stuff, I immediately go, oh, I'm unsatisfied with it. But in the end, I think there's a craftsman level to it. Seeing it work, and work as well as it does, is kind of a miracle and something to be proclaimed in itself. It's not maybe the most talked about or interesting thing, but it's true that it's nice to have an artist who's just very good at being that precise in being approved by his corporate overlords. So in that way, I guess Transformers Rise of the Beast, he's a fairly good Transformers movie for once, and it's kind of nice to see, the robots in disguise actually give me more than meets the eye than usual, where it's more than meets the eye and I'm just really bored. This was an exciting movie that sort of reminds you of what works about, big summer blockbusters, and reminds you of maybe it's a good thing Transformers is actually a part of that. So if you have seen Transformers Rise of the Beasts and would like to talk about it, then comment below in the comments and subscribe if you would like to.